The distress beacon had been active for 72 hours. No one answered it. Not because they couldn't. Because they knew what had crashed there. Veros 9's northern hemisphere was a frozen wasteland, endless white plains broken only by jagged black rock formations that cut through the snow like broken teeth. Wind screamed across the surface at lethal speeds, carrying ice crystals sharp enough to flay exposed skin. Nothing lived long in that region. Except apex predators. 3 days ago, something fell from orbit. It did not burn up. It did not disintegrate. It punched through the atmosphere and struck the ice with enough force to register on 3 nearby systems. Military satellites zoomed in immediately. They identified the biological signature within minutes. Classification followed seconds later. Apex-class predator. Extinction-level capability. Every known species in the quadrant recognized the designation. The creature had once dismantled an armored battalion on Hero 5. It had torn through fortified cities on Orvane before vanishing into wilderness. Not driven by conquest. Not by malice. Simply by survival. It was built to endure. Built to adapt. Built to kill. And now, it was dying in the snow. The wreckage smoldered faintly beneath drifting frost. Sections of its ship, if it could even be called that, were embedded deep in the ice. Organic metallic architecture twisted outward like broken ribs. Thermal scans showed faint heat signatures. Fading. Orbital fleets watched from a safe distance. None descended. One captain voiced what they all thought. If it survives, we fire. If it dies, we confirm. No rescue teams were dispatched. No diplomatic attempts initiated. Because predators did not negotiate. Predators endured. Or they ended. The wind howled across the plains as a single shuttle cut through the storm clouds. Unarmed. No escort. No defensive drones. Inside the cockpit sat Dr. Adrian Vale. Human. Civilian. Medical insignia glowing faintly on his sleeve. He adjusted the shuttle's descent vector, jaw tight but hand steady. The ship's AI issued its third warning. Surface conditions exceed safe operational limits. I know. Target classification, lethal biological threat. I know. Recommendation, abort mission. Adrian exhaled slowly. Override recommendation. The shuttle pierced through thick gray cloud cover and descended toward the impact site. From orbit, several alien commanders watched in disbelief. Is that vessel armed? Negative. Military? Negative. Civilian registry. A pause. Species. Human. The shuttle landed hard against shifting wind gusts. Ice sprayed outward as landing struts locked into place. For a moment, there was only white. White sky. White ground. White noise of the storm. Adrian sealed his medpack across his chest and opened the hatch. The cold hit instantly. Brutal. Cutting. He stepped down into knee-deep snow and scanned the horizon. The wreckage loomed ahead through swirling frost, half buried, half exposed. Metallic organic plating curved outward in unnatural angles, pulsing faintly as if still alive. And then he saw it. At first, it looked like another piece of debris. Until it moved. Massive. Easily 4 meters long, even curled in on itself. Armor-plated ridges along its spine cracked and fractured from atmospheric entry. One wing-like limb was twisted at an unnatural angle. Thick dark blood steamed where it met the snow. Its breathing was shallow. Uneven. A low vibration pulsed from its chest with each inhale. Adrian stopped walking. The creature's head shifted slightly. One eye opened. Vertical pupil narrowing against the wind. It locked onto him instantly. The world seemed to shrink in that moment. No crowd. No orbiting fleets. No distant observers. Just predator and human in the snow. Adrian's heart pounded once. Hard. Then steadied. The eye did not blaze with aggression. It burned with pain. Orbital command channels erupted. Human vessel, retreat immediately. Predator consciousness confirmed. Engagement window optimal while weakened. Adrian reached up and muted the channel. The wind carried the sound of the creature's breathing toward him. Ragged. Wet. There was fluid in its lungs. Shrapnel protruded from beneath its upper plating. Its claws twitched weakly against the ice. If it had full strength, he would already be dead. He took another step forward. Snow crunched loudly beneath his boots. The creature's lip curled slightly. Not a roar. A warning reflex. Adrian stopped again. Slowly raised his hands. Empty. I'm not here to hurt you, he said quietly. His voice was nearly swallowed by the wind. The predator's eye tracked every movement. There was intelligence there. Calculation. But exhaustion overrode it. Its massive chest rose. Fell. Hitched painfully. Adrian moved closer now, carefully angling himself so he remained in its line of sight. If it struck, he wouldn't have time to react. He knew that. But he kept walking. 50 meters. 40. 30. The scale of it became undeniable up close. Teeth longer than surgical blades. Claws capable of puncturing armored hull plating. Scars across its hide from battles most species had only read about in reports. This was the thing fleets feared. The thing children were warned about. And it was alone. Bleeding into the snow. Adrian knelt 10 meters away. Slowly unlatched his medkit. The metallic click echoed sharply. The predator's jaw tightened. A growl rumbled deep within its chest. Weak. But present. He paused. Met its eye. You don't have to trust me, he said softly. Another shallow breath from the creature. Its body trembled under the strain of simply existing. Orbital command reactivated the channel override. Human doctor, this is a direct order. Withdraw or we will neutralize the target. Adrian did not look up. He did not look away from the predator. Instead, he answered calmly. If you fire, you kill us both. A long silence followed. The wind howled louder. Snow began to accumulate along the creature's exposed flank. Its breathing faltered again. Slower now. More fragile. Adrian swallowed. Then did the one thing no one else in the galaxy had done in 3 days. He stood up. And walked the remaining distance. The predator's eye widened slightly as the human approached within arm's reach. Claws twitched. Jaw shifted. But it did not strike. Adrian lowered himself beside its massive head. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from its wounded body. Close enough to die. He looked at the torn armor plating. The blood loss. The frost gathering along open tissue. And spoke one final time into the silent storm. Okay, he murmured gently. Let's take a look at you. And for the first time since it fell from the sky, the monster did not roar. It simply watched him begin. The creature's breath rattled like grinding stone. Up close, the scale of it was overwhelming. Its skull alone was nearly the size of Adrian's torso. Bone-plated ridges curved backward like natural armor, fractured in several places from atmospheric entry. Frost clung to its exposed tissue. Dark blood steamed faintly against the snow. One eye tracked him without blinking. The pupil narrowed to a razor slit. Predator. Even wounded, it radiated lethal potential. Adrian slowly removed a thermal scanner from his kit. He moved deliberately, no sudden gestures, no rapid shifts. Every motion was controlled. I'm going to check your temperature, he murmured, as much to steady himself as to inform it. The scanner hummed softly as he passed it over the creature's side. Core temperature, unstable. Internal bleeding probability, high. Infection markers, severe. The creature's breathing hitched violently. A low growl vibrated through its chest, not loud, but deep enough to shake snow from nearby wreckage. Orbital command reactivated the channel. Human doctor, thermal imaging confirms systemic failure. Subject will expire within the hour. Withdraw. Adrian didn't respond. Instead, he crouched closer to the largest visible wound, a jagged section where organic metal plating had split open, revealing torn muscle beneath. Shrapnel was embedded deep. Each inhale pushed metal fragments further into tissue. That was killing it. He exhaled slowly. Okay, he whispered. That's the problem. The creature's jaw flexed. Teeth clicked together, a reflex, maybe pain response. Adrian froze for half a second. The jaws could close faster than his nervous system could register. Instead of pulling back, he adjusted his posture lower, reducing his perceived height, minimizing threat signals. The growl faded slightly. Not gone. But quieter. Snow whipped around them, wind screaming across the plains. Adrian activated a localized heat emitter from his kit, creating a small thermal pocket around the wound. Steam rose as ice melted from torn flesh. The creature tensed violently. Claws scraped against ice. Adrian spoke steadily. I know. It hurts. He reached into the kit again, slower this time, retrieving a stabilizer injector. Broad-spectrum clotting foam. Designed for battlefield triage. Not for Apex-class alien anatomy. He hesitated. The creature's eye focused sharply on the injector. Its breathing accelerated. Pulse spiked on his scanner. Adrian locked eyes with it. I'm not attacking you. The predator's lips pulled back slightly, revealing rows of serrated teeth. This close, Adrian could see old scars along its muzzle, healed fractures, impact marks. It had survived things that would annihilate fleets. And yet here it lay, dying from a piece of metal lodged wrong. He made a decision. Instead of injecting immediately, he extended his empty left hand first. Slowly. Open palm. He held it inches from the creature's lower jaw. The eye flicked to his hand. The jaw shifted. A breath passed over his glove, hot, metallic. The growl vibrated again. But weaker. The hand remained steady. Seconds stretched. Wind roared. Orbiting fleets watched in absolute silence. The creature's massive head shifted slightly downward. Not submission. Exhaustion. Adrian took that moment. He placed his gloved hand gently against the side of its jaw. Contact. Warm. Rough. Alive. The predator flinched. Hard. Jaws snapped shut violently. 2 inches from his wrist. Snow exploded outward from the force. Adrian didn't pull away. Didn't jerk back. He waited. Heart pounding so loudly he could hear it over the storm. The jaws did not close again. Instead, the creature's eye remained locked on him. Measuring. The hand on its jaw did not press. Did not restrain. It simply rested there. I'm here to help, Adrian said quietly. The growl faded. Its breathing slowed slightly. A decision had been made. He moved quickly now, but still controlled. Injector pressed into the exposed tissue beside the wound. The creature convulsed as the stabilizer foam expanded internally. A roar tore from its throat, weak but still thunderous. Shockwaves rippled across the snowfield. Orbital fleets powered weapons instantly. Engagement imminent. Human casualty probable. But the roar wasn't rage. It was pain. Adrian held his ground, bracing against the creature's thrashing limb. Stay with me, he said through clenched teeth. The foam sealed ruptured vessels. Bleeding slowed. Vitals stabilized marginally. But the shrapnel remained. Deep. Near a respiratory organ cluster. He scanned again. Removal required. No way around it. Without extraction, infection would kill it within hours. He looked up briefly toward the gray sky, knowing fleets were watching. Listen carefully, he said into the open channel. I'm going in. You will trigger a defensive response. Then don't fire. The line went silent. Adrian activated a surgical cutter, its blade glowing faint blue. The predator's eye widened again at the light. Adrian shifted closer to its chest cavity. Close enough that a reflex strike would end him instantly. I need you to stay still, he whispered. As if it understood language. As if this wasn't madness. The cutter touched armor plating. Sparks flickered. The creature inhaled sharply. Muscles tightened along its massive frame. Adrian cut carefully through fractured plating. The smell of cauterized tissue mixed with frozen air. Inside, the shard was visible now, jagged, metallic, embedded dangerously close to a pulsing organ sac. He reached in with reinforced extraction clamps. The creature's entire body shuddered. Jaws opened. A roar built in its throat. Adrian locked his eyes with its again. Easy. The clamps secured the shard. He pulled. The predator screamed. A sound so deep and primal it shook frost from distant rock formations. In orbit, weapon systems locked. Commanders prepared for worst-case cascade aggression. But the claws did not descend. The jaws did not close. The creature endured. The shard slid free. Blood surged, then slowed as clotting foam reacted instantly. Adrian sealed the wound with rapid suture mesh. Hands steady despite the tremors shaking the ground. Minutes later, he leaned back. Breathing hard. Exhausted. The predator lay still. Chest rising more evenly now. Eye half-lidded. Alive. The storm howled around them. In orbit, silence lingered. No attack. No rampage. No immediate violence. Just one impossible truth recorded across every observing vessel. A human had placed his arm inside the ribcage of an apex predator. And survived. Adrian rested one hand briefly against its armored flank. You're not a monster, he said quietly. You're just hurt. The creature's eye remained open. Watching him. Not as prey. Not as threat. But as something new. And far above, the galaxy began to reconsider what it thought it understood about predators. And humans. The bleeding had slowed. But it hadn't stopped. Adrian's scanner pulsed amber across multiple readings. Internal trauma, extensive. Respiratory sac damage, critical. Toxin buildup, accelerating. The shrapnel he removed was only the largest fragment. Smaller pieces remained. An infection was spreading. The predator's breathing was steadier now, but shallow. Each inhale carried a faint wet rattle that told him fluid was still accumulating internally. Above, the storm thickened. Visibility dropped. Orbiting fleets adjusted position to maintain surveillance lock. Then the channel reopened. Dr. Adrian Vale, a calm, lead alien voice transmitted. You have exceeded advisory parameters. Withdraw immediately. The subject remains a category extinction threat. Adrian didn't look up. He was sterilizing tools against the cold. It remains a critical trauma patient, he replied evenly. You are operating without council authorization. I don't need permission to stop bleeding. A pause. Then another voice, sharper, military. If the organism regains mobility, it will kill you. Adrian finally glanced upward toward the gray sky. If it wanted me dead, I'd already be dead. Silence followed. He turned back to the wound. The creature's massive chest rose and fell slowly, eye half open, watching him with fading intensity. Snow had begun accumulating along its lower flank again. He brushed it away gently. I need to go deeper, he murmured. No reaction, except a slight tightening of the jaw. The surgical cutter reactivated with a faint blue glow. He widened the incision carefully, cutting through fractured plating and thick lead muscle. Steam rose in thin wisps. Inside, the damage was worse than expected. One of the secondary lung sacs had ruptured. Fluid pooled around it. If untreated, it would suffocate long before infection finished the job. Adrian inhaled sharply. He had equipment for human thoracic surgery. Not for apex predator anatomy designed to withstand artillery. He adjusted his approach. Instead of removing the damaged sac entirely, too risky, he applied a microsealant patch, bonding synthetic mesh over the rupture. The predator's body convulsed violently. Its claws slammed into the ice beside him. A crater formed inches from his leg. He didn't flinch. Didn't pull back. Easy, he said through clenched teeth. The jaws snapped shut again, reflexive, not aimed. The eye locked onto him. Adrian met its gaze steadily. You're going to live. But you need to let me work. The storm roared louder, wind slamming into the wreckage. Orbital command monitored vital spikes. Subject stress response increasing. Heart rate climbing. Human risk escalating. One commander whispered off-channel. Why is it not attacking? Another answered quietly. It could. Down in the snow, Adrian inserted a drainage line to relieve fluid pressure. Dark liquid spilled out into the ice, steaming in the cold air. The predator groaned, a low, exhausted vibration. Not rage. Pain. Adrian worked methodically. Clot foam reinforced deeper tears. Synthetic mesh sealed microfractures along internal armor ridges. A broad-spectrum antimicrobial solution flushed the wound. The creature trembled but did not strike. Minutes stretched into nearly an hour. Wind carved drifts around them. Adrian's gloves were stained dark, his breath visible in sharp bursts. He was numb from cold. Exhausted. But he kept working. At one point, the predator's eye closed entirely. Vitals dipped sharply. Adrian's pulse spiked. Stay with me, he muttered urgently. He administered a stimulant compound, calculated from the readings he'd gathered so far. Risky. Too much could trigger systemic overload. Too little would do nothing. He injected. Waited. 3 seconds. 5. The creature's massive chest heaved sharply. Vitals climbed. Stabilizing. Adrian sagged in relief for half a breath before continuing sutures. Above, the council channel activated again. Dr. Vale. Council consensus. Termination strike authorized if subject regains combat mobility. He froze. Looked up at the sky again. You fire while I'm here, he said calmly. You lose the only species willing to treat your enemies. The line went quiet. A different voice responded, slower, measured. Clarify. Adrian sealed the final suture and pressed his hand gently against the predator's armored flank. You classify threats. You neutralize them. Yes. That works until something stronger shows up. Another pause. You think compassion is strategy? I think fear isn't sustainable. Wind howled between them. The predator's breathing deepened slightly. More stable now. Not healed. But no longer collapsing. Adrian leaned back, exhaustion finally catching up. He sat in the snow beside the creature's massive head. The eye opened again slowly. Clearer. Focused. Alive. It watched him. Not as prey. Not as rival. As something else. Recognition, perhaps. He rested his hand gently against the side of its jaw again. "You're going to make it," he said quietly. Above, weapon systems powered down one by one. Not deactivated. But no longer charged to fire. The council voice returned. "Human doctor, why intervene?" Adrian didn't hesitate. Because it was alone. A silence deeper than before followed that answer. He gathered his tools slowly, leaving the drainage line secured, the wound sealed as best as possible in field conditions. The predator shifted slightly. Muscles flexed beneath repaired tissue. Strength returning incrementally. He knew what would happen next. Eventually, it would stand. And the galaxy would hold its breath again. Adrian rose carefully to his feet. He did not step back far. He remained within reach. Within trust. The predator's eye tracked him upward. A low rumble vibrated through its chest. Not threatening. Not warning. Something closer to acknowledgement. Above the storm, the council recorded a new line in their report. Human intervention resulted in stabilization of Apex-class entity. But that wasn't the most important note. The most important note was unspoken. The predator had not attacked. And the human had not flinched. The snow continued to fall. And somewhere between the wreckage and the storm, the definition of monster had begun to change. Night came fast on Veros 9. The storm thinned to a steady whisper of wind over endless white plains. Stars pierced the dark sky like cold silver needles. The wreckage no longer smoldered, it lay half-buried, silent and broken. Adrian remained beside the creature. He hadn't left. He had reinforced sutures once more, recalibrated the drainage line, and wrapped thermal mesh across the largest wound to preserve internal heat. His hands trembled now, not from fear, but from exhaustion. The predator's breathing had changed. Stronger. Deeper. The rattle was gone. Its massive chest expanded fully now, pushing frost from its plated ribs with each inhale. Above, orbital fleets adjusted formation. Weapons remained powered but no longer locked. They were waiting. Everyone was waiting. The predator's eye opened completely. Clear. Focused. Aware. Adrian noticed immediately. He didn't reach for a weapon, he had none. He didn't retreat. He simply stood slowly, brushing snow from his knees. "Well," he said quietly, voice rough from cold, "that's a good sign." The predator's head lifted a few inches. Ice cracked beneath its weight. Muscle fibers flexed beneath lead armor. Strength was returning rapidly. Adrian stepped back exactly 2 paces, enough space to avoid sudden movement, not enough to signal fear. The creature studied him. Long. Unblinking. Then it moved. The first attempt to rise failed. Its injured limb buckled slightly, forcing it back down with a low rumble. Adrian instinctively stepped forward. "Careful." The word slipped out before he thought about it. The predator's eye snapped to him sharply. Stillness. A breath passed between them. Then, slower this time, the creature shifted its weight more deliberately. Rear limbs braced. Primary claws dug deep into ice. It rose. Fully. 4 meters of apex predator unfolding against the starlit snowfield. Its wings, partially torn but functional, flexed outward with a heavy crack of frozen joints. Armor plating realigned subtly along its spine. In orbit, alarms ignited. Target mobile. Combat posture detected. Engagement solution ready. Adrian looked up toward the sky instinctively. "Don't," he whispered. The predator's massive head turned slowly, not toward the human. Toward the horizon. Far beyond Adrian's hearing range, a faint mechanical buzz cut through the night. Scavenger drones. Drawn by the crash site's energy signature. Illegal harvesters that fed on wounded megafauna. 3 of them crested the distant ridge, red optics glowing. The predator saw them. Its posture shifted instantly. Not defensive. Predatory. The wings spread wider. Muscle density surged visibly beneath armor. The ground trembled faintly as it took a step forward. Adrian felt it. That raw, overwhelming presence. This was what colonies feared. This was what fleets prepared for. The drones opened fire first. Plasma bolts streaked through the night sky toward the predator's flank. One struck repaired plating, sparks flaring but holding. The predator roared. Not the weak cry of pain from earlier. A full, unrestrained apex roar that rolled across the plains like thunder. Adrian staggered back from the sheer force of it. In orbit, commanders panicked. Engagement cascade imminent. Humans still on ground. Fire authorization. They hesitated. Because the predator didn't turn toward the human. It launched forward. Fast. Far faster than its size suggested possible. Snow exploded behind it as claws carved trenches through ice. A single swipe crushed the first drone midair. Metal fragments scattered across the plain. The second attempted evasive ascent. The predator leapt. Wings snapping open with explosive power. It collided with the drone in midair, crushing it in its jaws before slamming it into the ice. The third drone retreated, firing wildly. The predator pivoted and unleashed a directed sonic blast from its throat. The drone shattered. Silence returned to the plains. Only drifting snow and distant echoes remained. Adrian stood alone beside the wreckage. Breathing hard. Heart pounding. The predator turned. Slowly. It approached him. Each step heavy. Measured. It stopped 2 meters away. Towering. Dominant. Untouchable. Adrian didn't move. Didn't raise his hands this time. He simply looked up at it. The creature lowered its massive head. Not in submission. Not in weakness. In acknowledgement. Its breath washed over him again, warm against the freezing air. Its eye locked onto his. Long. Then, incredibly, it stepped slightly to the side. Placing itself between Adrian and the open plains. A protective angle. In orbit, silence gripped every command deck. Did it just? Yes. It positioned itself defensively relative to the human. The predator flexed its wings once more, testing strength. Then it looked down at the human again. Adrian's voice was barely audible. You didn't have to do that. The creature made a low, steady rumble. Not threat. Not warning. Something closer to resonance. It turned away from him then, not fleeing, not hunting, simply scanning the horizon for additional threats. Adrian slowly gathered his medkit. He understood something critical in that moment. This creature was not merciful. Not gentle. Not safe. It was still an apex predator. But it had made a choice. And that choice had not been violence toward the human who could not defend himself. It had chosen the greater threat. Above, weapon systems powered down fully for the first time since impact. The council channel reopened. Dr. Vale, confirm status. Adrian watched the predator lift its head toward the stars. Patient is standing, he said quietly. A pause. Prognosis. Adrian glanced at the creature's repaired flank, the steadier breathing, the regained strength. Recovering. The predator took one more step away from the wreckage. Then another. It paused briefly, glancing back at the human one final time. The look was unreadable to most species. But Adrian recognized it. Not gratitude. Not loyalty. Recognition. It spread its wings fully and launched into the night sky. Snow erupted outward in a shockwave. Within seconds, it disappeared into darkness beyond the plains. Vero's 9 fell silent again. Adrian stood alone in the cold. The wreckage cooling behind him. Orbital fleet stunned above him. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, an apex predator had regained full mobility. And chosen not to kill the human who had knelt beside it. The storm began to gather again. But something else had shifted that night. Not in the snow. Not in orbit. In doctrine. The predator did not return to the crash site. It did not circle back. It did not stalk the human. It vanished into the frozen wilderness of Vero's 9, its heat signature fading beyond orbital tracking range within minutes. The wreckage was later collected by automated salvage units. Adrian Vale was escorted back to orbit under heavy guard. No one spoke to him during ascent. Not the military. Not the council observers. Not even the automated systems that had once flooded his comms with warnings. He sat quietly in the shuttle, medkit beside him, gloves still stained dark. Back in orbit, the council convened immediately. 12 species represented. Holographic projections filled the chamber. Replays looped endlessly. The surgery. The drone attack. The predator standing. The repositioning. The departure. One Virex commander spoke first. It spared him. A Jalari strategist corrected softly. It protected him. Silence followed that distinction. Another council member displayed colony impact data. In the months prior to the crash, the predator had been linked to 3 destroyed settlements. Heavy casualties. Mass infrastructure damage. Fear across border systems. Now fresh reports arrived from Veros 9's neighboring colonies. Scavenger fleets that hunted wounded megafauna had disappeared. Illicit mining rigs near the predator's territory had been dismantled. But civilian settlements? Untouched. Trade routes? Ignored. Military patrol ships? Observed, then allowed to pass. The pattern was unmistakable. Selective engagement. Apex behavior redirected. One counselor leaned forward. Are we suggesting behavioral modification? No, the Jalari strategist replied. Recognition. The chamber dimmed as new footage displayed. The moment in the snow when Adrian had placed his hand on the creature's jaw. The moment the jaws snapped and stopped. The moment the predator stood between him and the drones. A quiet truth settled over the chamber. The predator had not changed species. It had not become gentle. It had not been tamed. It had been treated. And it had responded. On the other side of the station, Adrian stood in a decontamination chamber, letting sterilization mist wash over him. An officer approached once the cycle completed. Dr. Vale. Adrian turned calmly. Yes? You are aware the entity you treated is responsible for thousands of deaths? Yes. And you chose to intervene? Yes. The officer studied him carefully. Why? Adrian dried his hands slowly with a sterilized cloth. Because it was dying. That is insufficient justification. For you? Adrian replied evenly. Not for me. The officer hesitated. You risked escalation. I risked compassion. That answer traveled quickly through internal networks. The council reconvened. New classification protocols began drafting. Apex class predator, Veros 9 designation, active. Addendum, demonstrates conditional selective aggression. Trigger event, human medical intervention. Then a new line appeared. Human psychological profile update. Displays empathy toward apex threats under high personal risk. Potential diplomatic variable in high-threat ecosystems. The Virex commander leaned back slowly. We built doctrine around fear. The Jalari strategist nodded. They built instinct around care. Back on Earth, Adrian filed his official report. No dramatic language. No philosophical statements. Just clinical precision. Patient, unidentified apex class entity. Condition at arrival, critical internal trauma. Intervention, hemorrhage control, shrapnel extraction, pulmonary repair. Outcome, stabilized. Ambulatory at departure. He added one final note before submitting. Behavioral observation, subject displayed restraint in presence of non-hostile individual. He closed the file. Weeks passed. Then months. Reports from outer systems continued. Where the predator's territory expanded, illegal hunting operations vanished. Black market organ harvesters ceased activity. Unregistered military skirmishes ended abruptly. But no new colony attacks occurred. A single recorded encounter showed the predator landing near a civilian convoy trapped in a snowstorm. It did not attack. It simply stood on a nearby ridge. Watching. Guarding. Until the convoy escaped. The footage spread across the galaxy. Not as propaganda. As confusion. The Galactic Council issued a quiet policy shift. When encountering apex-class megafauna, avoid immediate lethal escalation. Attempt non-aggressive observation first. Human advisors recommended for high-threat biological engagements. Some species protested. Some refused. But the doctrine had changed. Not because a monster became gentle, but because a human refused to see it as one. On Veros 9, long after the storm had erased most signs of the crash, a massive shape moved across the snow beneath the stars. Strong again. Scarred. Alive. It paused on a ridge overlooking the distant lights of a colony. Watched for several minutes. Then turned away. Far above, satellites recorded the movement. Marked it. Filed it. And did not fire. Back on Earth, Adrian returned to work in a quiet trauma ward. No medals. No parades. No interviews. Just patients. Just wounds. Just people, human or otherwise, in need of repair. A junior medic once asked him privately, "Weren't you afraid?" Adrian considered the question carefully. "Of course," he said. "Then why do it?" He smiled faintly. "Because fear doesn't stop bleeding." And somewhere in the frozen wilderness of Veros 9, an apex predator with fresh scars along its side moved through the snow. Alive because someone knelt instead of ran. The galaxy had feared a monster. Humanity asked if it was hurting. And that question changed everything.